Thank you for meeting with me today to reflect about your foundational skills lesson. I'm anxious to hear about your reflections on the lesson. I think it was lesson 16, Unit 3. So let's start off with the first part of the lesson, which is the sounds first activities. So if you will tell me a little bit about the sounds first, and I noticed that you started off with a mix it up,
Yes.
which I loved. So if you'll tell me a little bit about this part of the lesson and how you think it went, how you think your students are doing with the sounds first.
Okay. So for the mix it up, they're adding and deleting those sounds in there. So they're just mixing the words up while they have their mixing bowls. And they really seem to like that part. A lot of them get into the stirring and the mixing. And for the most part, they do really good with adding and deleting those sounds. There were a few, if like the majority of the class doesn't get it, I'll say, okay, stop, think about it, and ask them again to give them a chance to correct.
Okay, so you can actually hear various students and can kind of know right then
who's
is getting it and who is not. So tell me about this last part of the sounds first, where you read they have to figure out the mixed up words.
Yes.
So are they doing pretty good with that?
Yes, and they absolutely love doing that. Some of them have picked up on it more than others. It's still tricky for some of them, but they love to try to figure it out, and they all get excited when someone gets it. And then we'll usually try to talk about it. Okay, well, this is how I switched up the sounds. Some of them are still wanting to like add sounds in there, and I'm like, we're not adding anything. We're just switching our first sounds.
So do you think they're all catching on? And
Yeah, like I said, there's still several that need a little more work. That's kind of a harder skill, but I think it's helping them a lot.
Is this activity in every sounds first
Yes.
lesson?
Yes.
Okay.
We do it every day. The kids actually ask why we only do one a day.
Okay. Oh, you might have to make some up then, right? Make some extra up for them. That would be fun. Okay, let's go ahead to the meat of the lesson, I guess. And let's think about, what did you want your students to be able to do or to learn, or what was your objectives for this particular lesson?
Okay, my main thing I wanted the kids to get was the U sound and the different spelling patterns for the U sound, and also to be able to apply that to do some work and some reading.
Okay, so what parts of this lesson do you think really help them the most, maybe with your objectives? As you were.
Well, overall, I think the whole lesson is very helpful the way the curriculum is laid out. But I think one part of it that's really good for them to see was when we did the board sort and they were giving me the words and I was putting it in the correct category. I think that was very helpful for them to see all the different patterns.
Okay, so is this something that they come up and help you, or do they just?
Yeah, they gave me the words and then I sorted it into the spelling pattern that matched.
Okay, so that was, well, if that was your objective, that would be a good activity then. I noticed where you introduced your spelling words that they were antonyms and synonyms. Yes. So tell me how they did on their spelling test.
Yes, so the antonyms and synonyms we've been talking about for a while, but this was the week that they actually had to apply that on their spelling test. And overall, they did really good. I was kind of worried when I saw it because that's a lot to have to remember the antonym or the synonym and then remember the spelling patterns for the words they're writing. But overall, it went better than I expected. So.
Awesome. Okay, so I was anxious to kind of see because when I was observing or watching your video, I was like, well, I just wonder if they really understood.
Yeah, and I did have to give them a little bit of prompting, especially certain students, needed a little bit more to remember. But overall, I was happy with how they did.
Good. All right. So let's keep on going. And I wanted to talk to you a minute about the spelling trees. I've noticed everyone has their spelling trees up. So what are we thinking about how that's helping the students?
I think it's a really good resource for them. A lot of times when we move on to another lesson, if a skill that we've learned about on a spelling tree comes back up, I can say, think about your tree or look at your tree. Can you go point to the branch on the tree? So I think it's been a really good visual for them.
How are they doing with odd ducks?
Yeah, the odd ducks is one. A lot of times they don't give me an odd duck, and I know it says in the curriculum if they don't give it, don't mention the odd ducks. So most of the time they don't come up. In this particular lesson, though, they gave me the word suit, which has the ooh sound, and in the moment I didn't really think about it, so I put it on the odd ducks, and then later that afternoon I was thinking back on the lesson, looking at our tree, and I was like, that doesn't need to be on there. But it actually worked out well because we were able to talk about it the next day and talk about why that didn't belong on there, how that didn't have the U sound, it was actually the ooh sound. And then I realized when I was watching my video back, I actually did that with another word. I did it with flute. Because, when you're up there and you're trying to write and you're trying to sort and they're throwing words at you. So I had to go back and kind of think about that and reflect on that. And we had to talk about that a little bit and how close those sounds were.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it was okay, though, that you went back and you saw that, we should have done this. Yeah. And then they saw you correct it. Mm-hmm. So that was good to go back and do that. So as you're looking at your lesson and you're thinking about, did my students do what I wanted them to be able to do, or did they accomplish the ooh sound? Mm-hmm. I noticed that there was a worksheet, I think it was 16-2, mm-hmm. and that you modeled or you did about 4 of those mm-hmm. with them. And so we're thinking about getting those students to where they can work independently mm-hmm. on that. Mm-hmm. So are they making progress on maybe mm-hmm. being more independent with?
Yeah, the thing with the word bank, I think it is good practice to help them with this sound, but some of mine that aren't the stronger readers, they're really struggling to read the sentence to put the word in. It's not that they can't read the words in the word box. It's when they're trying to look at the sentence and then read all the sentence and try to figure out what word it goes in. That's where they're really struggling with those word bank sheets.
Okay, so I did notice that it says that they can complete the sentences independently mm-hmm. if it seems appropriate. Yeah. So that's knowing your class, yeah. right? Can they or can they not? Yeah. Or who am I going to have to help? Mm-hmm. If not, complete the sheet as a class. Mm-hmm. So it was okay. Mm-hmm. For you to do that.
I usually try to do about half and half. We start it together and then I try to use the rest of it to see if they can do it on their own.
Right. And sometimes maybe even we would maybe skip certain ones, or mm-hmm. let's see if we can do number 8 mm-hmm. on your own, and you could go around and check maybe to see who can keep up and who can't mm-hmm. also. So we're really striving to see if they can get to do that independently. Mm-hmm. All right, so overall, just thinking about your lesson and everything, how do you think the lesson went overall, and why do you think that? And think about your students too when you're...
Okay. Overall, I think it went well. The students were mostly engaged, especially during the whole group portion of the lesson when we were all together. And I think most of them do have a firm understanding of the U sound and the spelling patterns.
Great. Okay.
I can see that on their worksheet as well as some reading they did in their readers.
Good. Awesome. Glad you said that. So through their engagement and maybe some of the talk mm-hmm. that you're hearing mm-hmm. and some of the tasks that they're doing mm-hmm. and how they're responding, and you're able to tell that they're getting my objectives. So which parts of the lesson do you think were your strong points? What do you think?
I think watching back, watching myself and kind of assessing myself and reflecting, I think I did a good job with questioning them and kind of connecting to some of the prior learning that we did and asking them those questions that made them think back to what we'd done before. And I also thought I did a pretty good job staying on pace and pacing with our time frame that we had.
Right, because you were moving. Mm-hmm. You were like going from, I was, as I was watching, I was kind of thinking about the time and how mm-hmm. I thought there is no way she's going to get through this part, But you were moving, the kids were with you, you were, staying on pace. So I agree with you on that. Are there any areas or parts that you may have struggled with or think that you want to improve a little bit? Or
well, I'd say my biggest thing was the board sort, which, like I said, I think that was a very helpful and good activity, but there were a couple words where they were giving me words with the ooh sound and I wrote it when it should have been the U sound. So I would say that's something just it's hard when they're all giving you words, you're up front, you're trying to process it yourself, okay, where do I need to put it? So that's one part I think I could have improved on, and next time maybe be a little more mindful of that.
All right. I'm sure you are now.
The other thing would be maybe a smoother transition to our small group partner time.
Okay. Okay. I agree with that. And we're going to talk about your the small group part of the lesson. So we kind of like have divided up our conversation from the sounds first part and thinking about that, thinking about the main part of the lesson, and then thinking about when it comes to the partner reading and the small group time, which I think in the objectives also talked about that you wanted your students to be able to read and apply right in the decodables, read decodable text, read and understand decodable text, and determine the meaning of some multi-meaning words, which they would do in their reading when they're reading that text. So, all right, so let's spend a minute and talk about our small groups. Before you began your small groups, you set the purpose for reading with that KWL chart, and then you previewed some spellings, and also reminded your students of good partner reading manners. Is this something that you do like every day before you have your, I noticed you had a chart up with that also, where they could see that. So tell me, just thinking about the group that you pulled, so tell me a little bit about why you pulled that group of students, and I hope you're thinking about some data, since that's what we've kind of been working on. And tell me what you did during that group, and maybe if you, how you use the small group routine to help you in that group.
Okay. So for a lot of who I put with small group, I use a lot of anecdotal notes, because anytime we read whole group, I take notes. That's where a lot of those kids come from that I'm picking, and also just kind of how they're doing on their daily work and just what I observe in class. And sometimes I look at those unit assessments. The girls I chose for this day were girls that overall they do well, but they struggle and they need a little extra reinforcement. So they're not girls I see every day I do a group, but sometimes I try to pull them and let them have that extra reinforcement. So they're the ones I pulled to my table that day. And so we read our soccer twin story before we started. I usually try to pick a sound to work on, and so we did our sound in isolation. We talked about ED and the 3 different sounds ED can make. So the girls did some practice with that with our sound cards, and then reading and writing on their whiteboards, and then we read our story and they looked for the words in our story.
So you hit everything. You hit the out of text, you hit the in text, and also the warm-up activities, and so I think you did a great job pulling those students and hopefully helping them during that time. Is there anything that you would change or that you're finding might work better than something else when you're having your small groups?
Overall, I was really happy with the content I was doing with my girls in the small group and happy with how they were doing. My biggest struggle was just everybody else in the classroom. They know they're not supposed to come to me unless there's an emergency, but you know how that goes. So that they're coming up to me and I'm getting a little bit distracted, and then the noise level's rising a little bit. So that's my main issue, is sometimes everybody else, because it's the end of the lesson, they're getting a little restless. But overall, I was happy with the content I did in the small group and how the girls did with it. And I was able to assess them at the end by having them write a word or read a word, and I think it went well.
So tell me if there's anything since our last conversation. I know we talked about a little bit about classroom management and maybe some issues with that, and some things you wanted to improve on. Is there anything that you've tried that seems to be working? Are they doing better? Or
yeah, we're still working on some of the things you suggested. I'm still definitely trying to go over those expectations. I know you mentioned kind of like slowly seeing how far they can go, how long they can read, and how long they can stay quiet. So we've been working on that.
Okay, so what I did also for you that I thought might help was this was a classroom management, some ideals.
Okay.
And it's kind of like what we talked about, except I kind of laid it out And so what I want you to do is just to take this and just read over it and think about it.
Okay.
Okay? And just see how you could implement that sometime during the day. Just take a few minutes
Okay.
and try to say, okay, we're going to practice our noise levels. So this is kind of thinking about your acceptance of a particular noise level that you want them to be at. So we're going to start with voice level 1, which is like a whisper, okay? And then I think sometimes it's a good idea to even have, and you don't have to do it this fancy, just do a 1. Or, if you're ready for the next level, you do, okay, now we're going to practice voice level 2. So before you would maybe practice, you would say, just hold this up. This is our whisper level.
Okay.
So I did that for you.
Thank you.
Or you could do it on a whiteboard, but somewhere where they can all see the level that you want their voices to be
Okay.
at during that particular practice. So what I thought we could do is I can come and help you with this, or you can try it on your own
Okay.
and see what you're thinking. And then I'll get back with you in about a week. Okay, now it is Christmas. Okay, so this may be, you may think, Miss Deb, I need a little more time. They're just not where I want them to be. They really need maybe a little bit more practice. So we'll say after Christmas too, we'll continue to work on it.
Okay.
And hope that most of them can reach this particular voice level. So let's just see how that goes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is kind of the same thing. It's called quiet time strategy. And I talked to you about this, about just going over and flicking the lights off. And maybe if you did, when you do that, this could even be during a lesson or something. If they start getting a little crazy, try that. Hold the 1 up, until it's this acceptable level. Now, this is what's acceptable for you, but that probably the whisper doesn't stay for long.
Yeah.
So we'll try it.
Okay.
Okay, just try. All right. Well, do you have any questions about anything or thoughts about what we talked about today?
I think so. I think this will be helpful, so I'll definitely try that out.
Good. So I was just going to ask you what you think you would try, maybe. So, and then I'll just get back with that, and thank you you had some great reflections. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.